Thank you, everyone, for being with me tonight. I am really excited about tonight's webinar because it's a really interesting topic. I am going to do my little prayer, then we're going to dive in. So thank you. Thank you to the source of creation, the mother of the whole creation. Thank you to the infinitely diverse field of expression of that single underlying unified value, that oneness, that totality. Especially thank you to the forms and functions and levels of creation, which are our own self, which thank you to ourselves, thank you to the divine in all of us for being present, for bringing to bear our awareness and our being from those levels of self which have the capability, wisdom, and perspective to promote evolutionary transformation, to promote, to align with cosmic evolution, to unfold our full potential and the full potential of all that is. Thank you for your presence. Thank you to the presence of the ancestors. Thank you always for the love and support. Thank you to the holy tradition. That precious line of self-knowingness that connects to highest wisdom. Thank you, everyone, for being with me. All right. So I have my own ideas about what I do with these webinars is I have launching points. I have like seeds. I have little seeds that have the potential to grow into something amazing. But I want tonight's webinar to also be practical because I know that this isn't just a theory class. This is about something that's real for all of us, that there are relationships that aren't great, that maybe have the potential to be more fulfilling or whatever. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the underlying principles behind this, but most of you have already been with me for a while, so I'm sure most of you are already kind of pretty familiar with what a lot of the underlying principles. So we want to like put it into practice. We want to make it practical. So I really would love it. And I see there's already a question up on the board. Yay! Hello. Okay, so I'm looking at the question, and the comment is that they're excited about me coming to California. Yeah, I'm excited about that too, let me tell you. Really exciting. So anyway, I will treat all questions anonymously, of course, but for the sake of practicality, I'm going to be talking about certain more abstract principles, and we'll be doing healings for relationships. But if you have specific relationship situations that you would like to bring up in the question box, please do so, because that will give us a chance, that'll give me a chance too to kind of tie in some of the points from tonight in a more practical way for everybody, because I do want this information to be practical. Usually Friday night we're laying down a lot of the foundation, and then Saturday morning we get really extra super practical, which is why you guys are getting recordings of both sessions tonight and tomorrow morning. Okay, that's the business end of it. Now the webinar. So this is about challenging relationships and healing for challenging relationships. And even if all your relationships with all your friends and family and everybody are really fantastic, there is no question that at this time, 4 days away from the US elections, we are in a challenging relationship with our own political system here in the US. God bless you in Europe that you may never have to suffer through what we're going through right now, and that it's easier. But it can happen that on an individual level, the relationships are kind of okay. Like, I know a lot of you guys, you're very spiritual, you're very unbounded in your thinking, you've got beautiful hearts. And I would expect that 90% or 99.9% of the relationships are really fantastic. And for a lot of people on a day-to-day basis, we go about our business and it's fine. We get through somehow, we do a good job. But collectively, we are looking at something really crazy scary. And I don't know how much of the news is getting to you in Europe, all of you in Europe who are with us tonight, but I can tell you that even today, a lot of every single day, new twists and turns come out of what's happening in the collective of the US right now. And by golly, it is definitely affecting Europe. It is definitely affecting Europe. I saw reports of military actions taking place now. Estonia and Poland, the US is going to places, and Russia is going, and they're starting to build up forces now in Eastern Europe. So that's not fun for anybody, for any of us. And so one of the reasons I feel that we've come together at this time is to do everything we can as a collective to ensure really healthy relationship between ourselves and our own collective. And essentially that brings us right to point number one of the fundamentals of relationship, which is all these relationships are relationships with the self. Really, when something isn't going well with some relationship here or there, what it means is we've got our wholeness in ourself, our totality in ourself. And then somewhere there's some isolated little element that's out of synchrony with evolution. And so that, in order to see it and deal with it, it manifests forth in some relationship with someone else or some other aspect of life, like, a desire not being fulfilled or whatever. And then we get a chance to look at it under the microscope and deal with it. It doesn't mean that there's anything really wrong. It just means that opportunities for evolution are everywhere. So, go to my notes here just for a second and see. I'm going to the end of my notes. Yeah. So, ultimately, we've talked about how our physiology, and before we talked about how the physiology is the antenna of the whole universe. Ultimately, it's the whole totality of creation in a relationship with itself. That's what we're looking at. That's the bottom line. Bottom line is being of all creation that includes all of us as the different points of perception on the surface is knowing itself. It's in a relationship with itself. And it wants to have lots of different experiences of itself, and it wants to understand itself from many different angles and perspectives. So if we take it from that, that's kind of like the broad overarching vision. We start with that broad overarching vision. From that vision, no relationship, even the relationship of the individuals of Earth with the administrative powers in this Earth, is too big. No relationship is too big. No relationship is immune from healing and coming into alignment with the softest love, the softest, sweetest, most supportive influences available. Underlying all of it is that desire for evolution, the desire for self-knowing. So that's the motivation, even behind the worst of relationships. One of the things I wanted to bring out, one of the points I wanted to bring out with regards to bringing it more to a point value, okay, that was kind of big, so now bringing it down to a point, about relationships, is that when there's an area that the being is having difficulty like breaking through or progressing, maybe it's an unfulfilled desire, or maybe there's a relationship that's got some issues or something. One of the ways that being deals with this is it can move that, and this is because of the fractal-like nature of reality, that all areas of creation reflect each other on big, from big perspectives down to teeny perspectives. That we can take that area where something is blocked. Basically, it's a block of anytime there's discord or dysfunction, or we're dealing with some difficult karma or something. There's a blockage in the flow of life, of being, of life force, of prana, of energy. So we can take that area where the blockage is, and what being will sometimes do is it'll transfer that blockage over to another arena. There's a little blockage there. I'll transfer it over to another arena where we have greater facility to cope. Because if a block is in one area, it's because somehow the resources aren't fully engaged in that area to deal with that problem. So if that's a problem right there, then we can move it over to another area. So sometimes a problem in a relationship arises because there's an unfulfilled desire somewhere else. And that lack of fulfillment is moving into the area of relationship where we can have some give and take, where we are interacting with another person, so we're getting perspective of both individuals. So we see it from our perspective and we see it from their perspective, and that helps broaden the range that we're working with regards to expansion of consciousness. Basically, you expand it into looking at it from the angle of two people instead of just one, right? And then it's possible to make adjustments and to figure out, how do I position myself so that this is going to work out really nicely? And then once that transformation of position has taken place, then whatever the original unfulfilled desire is, that problem with that desire not being fulfilled becomes resolved, because changing position internally reorients you to find resolution in the area that was a little bit tricky. Okay, so thank you. I see another question has come in. Okay, thank you. And as I said, all questions dealt with anonymously. So this is a question. When a relationship is like a drug and you know it's not healthy, but you keep craving it and you can't let it go, why is that happening? Is it karmic? Oh, this is such a great question. And I have such a great answer. Anyway, I have an answer. Thank you for this great question. Yeah, it's really fulfilling to talk about this. It's one of my favorite things. So sometimes a relationship, like a crush, right? Like a crush. When in a crush, it's like part of the being knows that is never going to happen. Never in a million years is that going to happen. There are two things about that. Yeah, that also brings in the question of, I'm going to reframe the question just a little bit so that we can get into a real meaty answer here, juicy answer. When I was thinking about this webinar, I looked at it from several different angles inside myself. And one of the angles I took was, what is the most painful relationship? What is the most horrific, difficult relationship that a person can have as an individual? And I came up with two answers, both of which seemed really awful to me. One of them was when you're in a relationship that you cannot get out of, like a family member, for instance. You can't really divorce family members. And the other person is bent on self-destruction. The other person has, like, for example, if you're in a relationship with someone, they're in your world, they're in your life, but they have like a very in-depth relationship with drugs and alcohol, for example. And they are self-destroying big time, and you aren't. But you have to deal with it. You have to deal with it. So that's one really difficult. The other one that applies more to this question is unrequited love. And I decided that of the two, unrequited love is the most painful because unrequited love also ties into that other relationship. Ultimately, if we go to the source of relationship, say we take relationship as a force of nature. Relationship is a structure of consciousness in itself, and we follow it back to its source. What we find is the desire for fulfillment, the desire to express love, the desire to appreciate somebody else, to appreciate, to know, and to adore. That's the kind of the essence of relationship. So the most painful relationship is one where that's completely blocked off. And I feel as if it kind of ties into this question because the point of the question is, you know, it's not healthy to keep craving and you can't let it go. So that experience of not healthy and craving and you can't let it go, that happens when the fulfillment factor isn't there. When the element of the resolution or the completion of the relationship, when the relationship, you could say the full potential of the relationship ranges from unmanifest being all the way to the relative level of creation. And when the ability for the relationship to find expression from the deepest all the way up to the most surface and be full at a totality at every point. If the relationship isn't able to do that, then you get this situation where you feel unfulfilled, and that's the craving part. Okay. Can't let it go. In this quick question, there's a part of you can't let it go. There was a research study that was done on rats way back in the day. And in this research study, electrodes were placed inside the rat's brain in specific locations associated with bliss, like pleasure center, dopamine center, something like that. And then the wire was attached to a button that the rat had access to. You can imagine what happens. The rat goes over and just pushes the button, pushes the button, pushes the button, and they stop sleeping and they stop eating and they push the button, they stop everything because it's too much bliss to be on that button. So what can happen in a relationship like this, certain types of relationships elicit certain specific physiological responses in the body. And whatever that response is, it is associated with your highest evolution. So this is how a crush works, where teenagers are at this point where they're opening up, they're blossoming open all of this hormonal function and so forth, and the attention goes on a certain specific individual, and every time the attention goes there, there's a kickback, there's a physiological kickback that certain specific neurochemicals are produced, hormones are produced. It's like you get kind of a surge of a specific kind of hormonal production there that is blissful. And it's very evolutionary. So the antidote for a crush is whenever the attention goes to the person, because you know how it is in a crush after a while, so much attention on that person, you're sick of it. It's like, oh, I'm thinking about that person again. That's never going to happen. Why am I thinking about them again? Why every time I see them, my stomach goes, awareness. We want to shift awareness. When the attention goes to the person, we want to shift awareness back to the physiology and ask yourself, what do I feel when I think about that person? What is this craving? The word craving comes up. Keep craving. Can't let it go. What is this? What is the craving doing? What is it doing for me? What is it doing with me? What is it activating or creating in my physiology that is so attractive? It's like that button that the rat pushes. I'm looking. We've all had that experience. Everybody's had it. What I see is an activation in the dopaminergic pathways, which is a particular, oh, that was a big word, wasn't it? Sorry, let me slow that down. An activation in certain neural pathways connected to, and I almost brought up a visual for you guys on this, but can my team please make a note to add a visual for this particular visual dopaminergic pathways? Just spell it phonetically for now. We'll make sure it gets in the follow-up letter from the webinar. But because it's good to see it. It's really good to see where these pathways are. But they start down kind of in the brainstem. Back here, there's some little organs right there that produce specific neurochemicals that are extremely blissful. They go right past the amygdala and the nucleus accumbens, which are the pain and pleasure centers. They go past the pathways, go past the hypothalamus, which is in charge of how you feel. You really, in your body, like it's the inner feeling, right? Hypothalamus is how I feel inside my body. Pituitary. And up into this, it kind of slides right through the prefrontal cortex area. And it slides past an area called the orbitofrontal cortex, which is responsible for feelings of reward for good. So reward system. It's kind of like your reward system registers right up here in this orbitofrontal cortex. And this dopamine pathway goes right there next to that. So this dopaminergic pathway gets blocked. There's a little bit, it's like a little bit of an imbalance connected to the amygdala. So what happens is there's a little bit of discord gets tied into I'm seeing we're clearing habits. Habits in the dopaminergic pathway, and right where it goes right past the amygdala. Clearing habits, clearing ancestral habits. Oh, 8 generations, 8 generations, ancestral habits of having a connection between bliss and pain. Okay, this is very interesting. First thing that's happening is a big release of discordant feelings. The second thing for you and for the ancestors, the second thing that's happening is a lot of the discordant feelings that are releasing in the heart area, actually. And in the last webinar, I believe we did some upgrade and some work specific on the heart itself physically. We're extending that work today by doing further work on the heart, the physical heart, particularly with regards to the way in which nerves in the heart, the whole nervous network of the heart is structured. There's something about that relationship between pain and pleasure which activates a response in the heart. Oh, it's so interesting. Now, I'm not a medical person, so I see stuff inside the body, but I don't always know exactly detail of it. But I can tell you that what I'm seeing is that the heart has this capacity or potential to produce what looks to me like some kind of hormones. That there's some sort of hormonal element connected to heart functioning. And I mean the physical heart. It also is connected to the heart center, the heart chakra, but in this case, this has to do with the organ itself. And it's related to feelings of empathy, compassion, even pity, but more empathy and compassion, even more the ability to see from another person's point of view, which is basically empathy is that. But I would say an advanced form of being able to perceive or see from another person's point of view in the heart. and it's activated, or there's been a habit for like all these 8 generations. Now it looks like it's going back 9 generations. We're working. It probably goes back farther than that, but in the energy healing, sometimes we only need to go back so far to get the work done. But there's a relationship between seeing someone else suffering and an activation of qualities, very poignant, very sort of deep-seated qualities of love. And that kind of makes sense as a parent, you know, because like a mother is wired to respond when her child cries, you know, like that. So that's some wiring in the heart. And it's not that we want to stop that, you know, we want to be able to feel compassionate and empathetic when people suffer, but the important thing is to not be dependent upon that. The important thing is to be able to move forward in relationships without the pain. That bliss also can have a little bit of, you can activate both the pain and pleasure centers together to get really high levels of bliss. So this is I feel like we're splitting hairs here. But what we're doing, what's happening is there's a adjustment that took place in the brain in these dopaminergic pathways, and that caused an adjustment to take place in the heart chakra to support the ability to see through the eyes of another and to have the compassion and empathy, to function at very, very high frequencies of feeling without having this experience directly connected to or necessitated by pain. In other words, we're going for the bliss without the old habit of the pain that sometimes precedes it. Purification, probably always, because that's super evolutionary, but it doesn't have to be painful. I'm just going to go back to that question and make sure that I covered all. When a relationship is like a drug and you know it's not healthy, the word not healthy in there indicates to me some element of abuse in the relationship, possibly. Keep craving it, can't let it go. The not healthy side of this question, I think we've covered the rest of the question pretty much. You know, I mean, of course there can be karmic ties, but karma kind of plays into everything. Like anytime there is any physical discord, there's any lack of fulfillment of desire, there's any, you know, problems with relationship or anything, there's always going to be some karmic connection in there. So I would say karmic, yes. But the not healthy part of this question has to do with that point where you have control over how this relationship rolls out. So that's the one thing that we didn't talk about in this question. And that is that some relationships any relationship that is not really satisfying is showing one where to focus attention in order to heal something, in order to progress better. It's showing where there's some kind of block in the flow of consciousness. So if one finds oneself in a relationship, for example, that's abusive, where someone is exploiting you or taking advantage of you, then the question has to turn around to where am I giving away my power? Where am I, where am I giving away my power? Where am I allowing myself to be exploited? Not every relationship is appropriate to pursue. Not every relationship is worth it. The other point about that, on this point right here, is It can be good to be in a relationship as long as the bliss outweighs the discomfort. Like say there's a kind of exploitative relationship or something, and you know that you're giving more in that relationship than the other person, but there's still bliss, and there's still a sense of, I'm really growing in this relationship. I'm learning a lot about myself. I'm getting stronger. Sometimes we choose. Sometimes if you're a very, very strong person, you may need to be in a relationship that's challenging in order to push your strength to its next level or something like that. So there can be a certain level of choice there, but there comes a point in any relationship which is karmic, like that, where you're actually being taken advantage of or exploited, where the discomfort that you are experiencing the relationship is outweighing the benefit. And that is the point where you know that you have just paid off your karma. So it's not unusual to be in relationships where there's, I'm given this much and I'm getting that much in return. And so, and it's always going to be a little bit uneven. That's just the nature of relationships, is, you know, kind of back and forth, like a little dance, you know. But the point where it becomes so uncomfortable that you have the thought, gee, it's not worth it. That's the point where literally that is nature telling you that you've paid off your karma. You're done. You can walk away from this relationship, even if you're in the middle of a project with someone, even if whatever it is, even if there's seems like, oh, unfinished business or whatever. That is the point that nature and that your big self is telling you, my business is done. It's okay. I can walk away now, and I don't owe this person anything. I hope that answered the question. If it didn't, ask some more, ask more deeply. Here's another question. How to immediately heal or transform a relationship that is blocking, using misinformation, etc., the flow of success and gifts and support, in particular money, that is actually desired by another one and nature to give yet a third person. These are all family members. Okay. That's a little bit complicated question. So let's break it down. Again, it's good to reframe it a little bit. And for two reasons. One is that almost always we will have, everybody has similar experiences. So we want to heal and transform a relationship that is blocking the flow of success, and that is actually desired by another person to give to yet a third person. I'm also trying to understand the question. So here's the way I'm interpreting the question. So the person who asked this question, you might need to clarify for me a little bit. So it looks like what's going on here is you feel that the flow of success, gifts, and support, like the flow of money coming to you, is being blocked by a family member. So you have a family member who is manipulating or, is sort of lying, misinformation is lying, so that the flow of love and support from your family is not able to come to you. It's blocked. Yes, that is correct. Okay, good. Yeah. And then the idea is that that person wants all the good to flow to yet a third person. They want all to, so basically it's being blocked from you. Okay, so the first thing here that I'm seeing is that the whole thing is kind of built up on a premise that I would say was coined by my father, which is the concept of limited good. That, oh, well, there's only so much good to go around, and it's only this much. And so, when that concept is accepted by everybody in the scenario, everybody believes, well, there's only this much, like say an inheritance. Take an inheritance, for example. This inheritance is X number of dollars. And so there's only that much, and it's going to get divided when, somehow this pie is going to get split up. And it looks like not everyone's going to get equal parts. And people are vying for, oh, the pie is limited, and therefore I want the biggest piece of the pie, or I want the biggest piece of the pie to go over here, or whatever. So it's hard. It's hard because one of the first things, and this definitely has to do with relationships, so I'm happy to bring out this first kind of foundational point, and that is sometimes we are dealing with unreasonable people. It just happens. Sometimes we're dealing with, or sometimes you might be dealing with, I mentioned the case of dealing with people who have relationships with drugs and alcohol. That can make people very not themselves, out of touch with their own essential nature, which is bliss, which is being, which is totality. So there's that. But also sometimes you can just be dealing with people that are just really imbalanced too, emotionally and mentally imbalanced. And sometimes it's not uncommon for families to have one member, or sometimes more than one member, but it's really not uncommon for families to have a member who is really imbalanced. And families will take on a family member who has really major problems. The collective of the family will bring in karmically an individual who's got big problems, so that everybody gets stronger. It makes everybody stronger to be in a situation like that. Wait, there's more. Oh, this is exciting. Oh, more questions. Oh, oh my gosh. Yeah. Yes, okay. So, okay. I'm still on this one question about the inheritance, okay? So then we have more questions. Oh, you guys are so awesome tonight. This is very fun. This is very fun for me. I'm enjoying it. I like just talking and no one asks questions too, but I really like this too. Okay, so that's point number one. Sometimes you're dealing with someone who's actually downright crazy. Or, again, in the case of if you're dealing with someone who's got drug and alcohol relationship, then what happens is that person has a greater capacity to adhere to their paradigm, to their vision. Oh, the pie is only so big and I want it all, or whatever their vision is. They have more of a greater capacity to do that in that state of imbalance than you do in the state of being a reasonable person. It's weird, but it's the way it is. That reasonable, nice, balanced, healthy people almost always will take other people's point of view into consideration. They will almost always consider for a minute somebody else's perspective. But people that are nuts won't. They are 120%, they are 200% on their line of reasoning, and they are almost always have a greater capacity to fight for their vision, which may or may not be aligned with the highest truth, than you are to fight for your vision, which is aligned with is probably more aligned with highest truth. So right there's a little problem. So what we've got, a kind of a friction builds up right there. So the point, at that point, we want immediate healing is mentioned here. At that point, the mode of operation is do not try to meet them on their level, because you can't. If you're a reasonable person and they are an unreasonable person, they can always fight harder for you than you for their unreasonableness. Then you can fight for your reasonableness. So you can't meet them on their level. It is imperative to go beyond that sort of superficial level of functioning and meet them, meet the whole situation at a deeper level. So when we're talking about something like an inheritance, and this is so common in families, we're really talking about the loving, the expression of love, the expression of love. Remember, love is the currency of the universe. Love is the currency of the universe. And the thought is, my parent loved me. They loved me as much as they loved that other person. And I'll tell you, if that person was really unreasonable, it is even possible they loved you more. It is even possible that the parent looked to the reasonable child and thought, God, what a sweet, angelic, good-hearted, ever doing, acts of devotion and kindness to everyone child. And then there's my drug-addicted child who's got a lot of problems and makes everybody miserable. And the question is, why is it that that person is getting all the resources and the nice, reasonable person isn't getting the resources? The answer is that inheritance, those resources, that money, all that wealth, success, gifts, that is nothing. It is nothing compared to the resource of being, the resource of consciousness. Once a person passes out of their body and goes into the spirit realm, they see how love is the currency of the universe, and they understand riches and wealth in a way which is non-superficial. Any inheritance, this is important, any inheritance is limited. It comes in, it's one chunk of money. Inheritances don't tend to stick around, even if you think, well, I'm going to invest some of this money so that it will expand. I'm not going to just let it just fritter away. I'm going to do something with it. It always carries a certain amount of karma with it from whence it came. And nothing is more valuable than self-sufficiently producing the money on an ongoing basis from the level of being, from deep within your own being. The resource to do that is priceless. It is priceless. And even if one family member gets the lion's share of the financial resources, it does nothing for them compared to your ability to self-produce unlimited amount of wealth from your being, self-sufficiently, autonomously, in your power, as the force of nature that you are. You are a force of nature. We are all a force of nature. Remember that bubble diagram we talked about, or that diagram from unmanifest to manifest? At the spirit level of the physiology, you are the laws of nature. You are the laws of nature. You are. Those principles that direct reality to create specific effects. And in the case of an inheritance, there are expectations, and all the family members are throwing their expectations into the pot, and their expectations may be disagreeing with each other. And we all know that expectations limit the outcome. So, the principle here is, without expectation, I'm looking into the sacred garden of the heart of the family. And we do this for all the everybody's families. Everybody's families. Every family has its own sacred space, its own holy space. And in that space, the healing is establishment of the relationship of love. Establishment of the love. Your hearts have just gone through, in the previous healing, have just gone through an evolution. And in the previous webinars, we've been doing that. And I'm sure some of these excerpts of the heart healings are online to my team. If they're not online, we should go back and find them and put them online. Or I will film them and we'll put them up online. But the point is that the heart is so developed, it is so evolved, that you know that the relationship doesn't end at death. When the loved one whose life was spent accruing wealth and accruing fullness goes out of their body, the relationship does not go. The relationship is precious. It even becomes more precious because in their finer physiology, they can appreciate your love so much more than they could even when they were in their physiologies. So you are more powerful to nurture that relationship now than you were even when your parents or whoever were in the body. And your ancestors, all as far back as you want to go. You are in a more powerful position, and it is the nurturing of that relationship through love that is the foundation for manifesting the wealth and the success, for manifesting, the flow of gifts, and particularly support, and particularly support of nature, which is so infinitely more valuable. It's not, support of nature can manifest as wealth. And if that's what's needed, it will. But it's more important to own the support of nature, so that if you need wealth, you have wealth. But if you need synchronicity, you've got that, whatever it is. But more than that, when it's in a family and there's fighting, what we're doing is, this is the immediate healing now to transform, is all the little places where the discordant feelings are in that sacred garden of the heart of the family. And this is for everyone. Any little point of friction, we're looking for points of friction now throughout the entire system. That means everybody's sacred garden with all their family members. Any little, got it. Any little point of friction. What we're doing here is, this is very simple, and I'm going to ask you to participate with me in this, really consciously participate with me, is allow your attention to innocently be with the person with whom there is a little friction. No expectation, no judgment, just with that person. You can feel their personality, feel their nature as a being. And even if it's all crumbly or crummy or angry or whatever, it doesn't matter. We want to go down to the essential nature of that physiology. Somewhere deep, deep, deep back in the annals of the history of the creation, you chose to be in a relationship with that person because you trusted them with a very difficult lesson. So there, at that point in the relationship, where you trusted them long before this lifetime, probably long before, way, way back, when you have such a long history with them that you were hard on them and they were hard on you, and you were hard on them and they were hard on you. And after so many lifetimes, it's like, wow, you know what? I know you can help me. I know you've got I trust you to be difficult in just the right way, to make me strong. To make me strong the way I need to be. So you go into that part of that relationship. There's bliss in every relationship. That part of the relationship. Innocent. It's very innocent. When we first forge these relationships, innocent and hope of the evolution. Back when being is folding in on itself, the being of all creation. It's like, which pieces do I need to put together to grow the way I need to grow to give most perfect expression to my own divine nature? That part. And then, with tenderest touch, offered back to divinity. You just offer the relationship back to your own divine nature, to the source of creation, to the mother of the universe. That's all. That's all. And the worse the relationship is, the more delicately you just go, whoop, and just let it go. The more difficult, the most difficult relationship, that's what it is. If it's not such a difficult relationship, you might be able to go in and work with it a little bit and, tenderly give some love and then let it go. But if it's a really impossible relationship, we go in and we find the origin of the relationship in its original, very most innocent point of its expression when it first began, and there was all that hope and all that vision for perfection manifested in the relative, and then just give it back to the divine. So powerful, so powerful. It will heal the relationship. And like I said, quick, you know, the worse the relationship is, the more quickly and delicately you just barely touch. It's like you barely touch them. You barely touch them. Just, oh, right there, okay, I let you go. But you can come back and do that again later, next day, next day, next day. In the case of the lady who, the person who anonymously asked this question, do it every day. Take 1/10 of a second every day to do that. And you will be amazed at what happens. Email me, let me know. It's like magic. It works so good. It's like magic. It really works. Okay, more questions. Okay, so here's another one. Can karma of a place or location affect the relationship with people and prosperity? Yes, absolutely. Particularly based on the history of the location, the energy frequencies in the location. I'm going to send you an email about this, by the way. Just saying. I owe this person an email. But again, it's like having a relationship with a location rather than a person. And this brings up a really interesting point about relationships that I didn't know we were going to look at today, but I'm kind of glad that you brought this up. Thank you for doing that. And that is that we have relationships with being, not just human beings, but we have relationships with being in all of its infinite forms. So we have relationships with like I have a relationship with music. I also have a relationship with dance and with ceramics and other art forms. And those are not people. Those are not people beings. Those are Davic beings. Those are big beings. Those are big forms of being. But the relationship is a lot like a relationship with a person. And you can have a relationship with the place that you live, very much like a relationship with a person. And this brings me to another important point about healing, which is you can have a relationship with your body also as a place where you live. Because we live in our bodies, right? We have a relationship with our microbiome. We are, as this healing, as this live webinar is going on, we are continuing to enhance and support our relationship with our dopaminergic pathways and hypothalamus. So yeah, you can have a relationship with the place where you live. And again, you can look at that relationship a lot the way we look at a relationship with a person. And that is that if you're living in a location that is essentially discordant or dysfunctional, number one, if you are living in a place like that, one has to ask oneself, well, I chose to live in this place. So it must be. Now, wait a minute. I chose? Who chose? Who chose to live in that? Did you choose to live in that place? Wait, no, being chose. Being organized circumstances and situations, and you were at the right place at the right time. You're like, yeah, I'm buying that house, or I'm renting that house or whatever, or apartment or condo or whatever. And it happened that you ended up living in that place. But that happening ultimately would not have happened if it wasn't in accord with the highest evolution of the whole creation. Because nature supports what happens. Things happen on the surface of creation because nature supported that. Even if it doesn't make sense or it seems weird when you're in the middle of it. American politics. I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm not pushing any leanings in any direction. Everybody votes for who they want to vote for. But I'm just saying that when something happens, It happens because all of creation is supporting that thing happening, even if it doesn't make sense. So the fact that anybody here may have ended up in a location which seems unhealthy, maybe it's got an unhealthy microbiome, maybe it's got unhealthy influences from Earth's energies because of its orientation. And other things that could be going on, mold, electromagnetic influences, etc. Nature placed you in that position to allow you to evolve in a specific way that you would not have evolved otherwise. And whatever it is that the being of all creation is learning by putting that person together with that location, as soon as, this is the same principle we talked about earlier about karma, because it says, can karma, in this question the word karma is there. You will be benefiting to a certain degree, but then also uncomfortable to a certain degree. And when the balance of benefit and discomfort goes so far to the side that the feeling is the discomfort outweighs the benefit, then that means you learned the lesson that you were supposed to learn from that experience, that you evolved what you are supposed to evolve through that experience, and it's time to move. It's time to move to a different location. And that, throughout, what I'm seeing here as far as healing for this particular question is, one of the lessons is not to blame. Not to blame. Because the location is doing what it does. And the situation evolved the way it evolved for its own purposes. And the being of all creation is having the experience it's having. And it is time to move on. But before the move happens effortlessly and spontaneously with support of the whole creation, there has to be no blame. There has to be no, well, it's the fault of the location, or it's the fault of my body, or it's the fault of this or that. It's no fault. It's just a desire to shape divinity in a certain way in order for divinity to know itself in that particular way. And it's beautiful. It's really so very beautiful. Once we get past the blame and the judgments, it becomes very beautiful. I hope that helps. May the beauty of the situation dominate awareness at every point. And I'd say that this comes from letting, anytime the attention goes on it, to let the attention redirect back into the heart. Your heart, the heart is the part that has evolved through this experience. This is what I'm seeing for the lady who asked this question. Her heart has developed in a way that it would not have developed otherwise. And the heart is very mature, is very, very refined. So anytime the blame or judgments come up, just refer back. It's almost like two eyes. You want to see it. If we look at it from this point of view, it looks one way. But if we look at it from the heart, you actually are viewing the situation from the heart. It's like having two eyes open that are both giving a slightly different perspective. And so the two perspectives together give an expanded, in-depth perception of the situation. And it will make it so you will never have judgments or expectations or blame ever, ever again. It's just beautiful. This is why you came here. This is why you're doing this. It's huge. It's huge. And it is so unusual. Not that many people are able to do this, but you can do this. It's incredible. That's why I said it's so beautiful. You are so beautiful. Good job, everybody. All of us, we're doing it. And as we're doing that, and I have a bunch more questions, so I can't go in this direction, but I'm just letting you know because a lot is happening in this live webinar, and that is that we are now applying that energy to our collective. Thank you, everyone. It's a very important point. I'm just going to say one part of it, and that is that one of our lessons as a collective in this particular 4 days out from our American elections here, in probably the most outrageous, unbelievable presidential election ever in the history of the US ever. All the corruption is being exposed, right? This is like the House. Oh, look, the House is a mess. Yeah, guess what? And the trick is to get this to work in a way that will favor the goodness and the potential and the deservability of the wonderful people in this country, and heaven knows for the whole world, because depending on how the election comes out is going to very much affect and influence the war machine that is America. And please forgive me for even speaking that word during a live webinar. It's good though. We need to look at what's true. We need to look at truth. That's why we're doing these live webinars, right? Nothing is too big for the wholeness of creation to heal. Nothing is too big, even the war machine that is America. So be it. There it is. No blame. No blame, no judgment, no expectations. We can apply that even now in our current system, because we know it's a mess. But if the mother walks around the house going, it's a mess, it's a mess, I don't know what to do, it's a mess, she'll never get the place cleaned up. So, right? So we have to stop wringing our hands and saying, it's a mess and it's my children's fault for making a mess. The blame time is not useful progress time. The useful progress time comes when the blame has been totally released and the heart and mind are looking together like a nice, big, broad perspective. Divinity focuses in on that darkness. And right now, divinity is focusing in on the darkness. And what's happening is fear all over the whole globe. There's fear that's acting kind of like a magnet. It can pull in this World War III scenario or whatever. No, fear is little. There's little. When the mother of creation comes in to clear that, it's simple. Fear is basic stuff. We can do it. We are doing it. We are doing it. And what I'm experiencing as this collective of our webinar is doing this precious cleanup. I'm feeling so much activation in the heart area, in the heart chakra of everybody in this webinar. Absolutely beautiful. And we're clearing fear from the heart. Clearing fear from the heart, physical organ heart, from the circulatory system. Clearing fear. The circulatory system represents the flow of bliss. So as the blood flows, bliss flows in the being. Endorphins flowing through the circulatory system. And this flow of the heart comes with such a sophisticated, this is you doing this. This is your sophisticated capability to see through the eyes of all. See through the eyes of the whole world and adore without a thread of judgment, expectation, blame. Not a thread, just see through the eyes of the whole world. Adoring. We chose this. We chose to be here at this unbelievably, amazingly transformational time in the history of humanity. And it's really mega exciting and interesting, isn't it? It's awesome. And as before, with a difficult family member, in this state of understanding why we really are here, which is to be powerful players in the drama of this transformation for good, for highest good. We touch it. We touch all that imbalance, corruption, negativity, fear, deceit, all that. Oh, it's a big mess, right? And then just offer it back at the feet of the divine, back to the silence of being. And bliss is flowing. Bliss is flowing through the entire system. Bliss is flowing through the entire system. And the bliss dominates over all that dark stuff. And what it does is it adds, this is what I'm seeing. This is on a very large collective level. It's adding a perspective to all that negativity, all the corruption and the deceit and the lies and all that stuff. The list gets longer every day. And the bliss is activating like a hum. I am seeing it manifesting like a resonation. These resonations, they are live. They are life. They aren't corporeal life, but they are forms of creation that are living, intelligent, with intention. And this one is so beautiful. And I have never seen it before because I didn't know that I could look upon the body of bliss. I didn't know that bliss had a body like this. So beautiful. So what we're doing is, as a collective, our webinar, honoring this relationship between ourselves and the bliss, which is itself a manifestation of the divine. Because we can have relationships with lots of things, right? Right. We talked about that. And creating such a precious, beautiful, ornamented, decorated, holy space of union. This is a relationship. Think of it like a relationship with a loved one who's passed away. They don't have a physical body anymore. This is a relationship with bliss. This is your relationship with bliss of being. The bliss of the universe has its own structure. It has its own nature. It has its own unique parameters. Because Mother of the Universe is everything, 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 everything. All totality includes everything, everything. But bliss itself has its own special space. And the channels were already cleared at the beginning of this session. We could find that space when we have the perspective from the mind and the heart simultaneously, and the gut also simultaneously. This experience of this holy relationship between the individual and the bliss of creation is now communicating to your microbiome. Oh, that's good. Oh, you guys are good. No, I had no idea we were going in that direction. That's good. You guys are good. This is big. This is exciting. As the microbiome comes online, in accord with the relationship with bliss, Upgrades for the microbiome, big time. Everybody's digestion. Also, if you live in a home, because this all came out of this incredible person's question about having a home. Sometimes, as I mentioned before, the home is unhealthy, like it's got mold or it's got EMFs or it's got whatever. This microbiome, like Superman microbiome, which is birthing inside all of us right now. And everybody who watches this video, may it go to YouTube, and please bless everyone on YouTube. This is blessing us. This is blessing our world. This is making you invincible to influences in your microbiome, which could be damaging. It restructures from the inside out. We are restructuring from the inside out. Thank you for that amazing question. Beautiful. Okay, oh, more questions. Lots of cool questions. Okay, here's another one. If there is a relationship where one person seems to be in denial as a way to deal with things, oh, nice perception. Yeah, that does happen, doesn't it? Such as saying that there is nothing wrong with a car, which seems to have a problem. And is that due to codependent component? It seems challenging for the other person. I bet it does. Maybe this relates to the current election too. Oh, you think? I think it does too. Absolutely. My goodness, you guys are so good. Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. So yeah, denial. Being in denial is not a good thing. It's not a good thing. Denial, being in denial as a means, as a coping mechanism, two things. One is it's very often ancestral because it's like time tested. You know, if there's something that I don't like, then I'm going to cut that thing out of my paradigm. And if I cut it out of my paradigm, then my paradigm is going to sit over here in my comfy space the way I like it. And then hopefully that thing won't enter my comfy space. So it comes primarily from fear of having to deal with something, and underneath the fear is related to a belief system that I am not possessed of the capabilities to deal with that thing. And boy, the election is a great example of that, because we're looking at something big that's expression of the collective functioning, and for any one of us to look at that just like is huge. It's too big for any one of us, but it's obviously not too big for our collective. God bless you guys. So the belief that I do not have the resources or capabilities to deal with this problem, and therefore I don't want to look at it. That belief is, in my perception, the core of the problem of being in denial. And under that, I'm following a thread. Can you see me following a thread? I'm following a thread. Underneath that is the feeling of helplessness, victimhood, is even if I had the resources, I wouldn't know how to use them. Even if I had the capability, I'd probably self-sabotage. So there's a lack of belief in one's own personal power that's behind the denial, ultimately. Lack in belief of one's personal power. That, following the thread, comes from experiences and impressions from the past. Again, that's why I said ancestral, but also personal impressions from the past related to trying to do things and not being successful. And for some people, I'm seeing in the group, because we're working the questions, specific questions, the divine brings each question because it's what all of us really need at that moment, right? So you are a force of nature. You are giving me these beautiful questions. So, it's 9:15 too, and I didn't get to all the questions. Don't worry, if I didn't get to all of your questions today, I will get to your questions tomorrow. Oh, there's a whole bunch of questions. Oh, okay, I'm going to answer this last question. Then I promise I will start out tomorrow's webinar with everybody's questions who didn't get answered tonight, because I love you all dearly and I don't want to miss a single one. Your questions are so juicy. God, the time went by really fast today, didn't it? Yikes. Anyway, personal power, I'm tracing back to early childhood. And what happens in early childhood is there comes a point where baby stops feeling like, oh, I'm just an appendage of my parents, and starts to realize, oh no, I am a unique person with my own set of ideas and concepts and what I want to do, and I would like to exercise my personal power. So if mommy says she wants to do it that way, I'm going to say, no, I would like to do it my way. And at that point, mom has a choice. She has a choice to say, no, by golly, you do it my way, or else because I said so, which basically teaches the child that their way doesn't count and it's not useful and they don't have power to do it their way. Or mom can say, okay, we have a dynamic going on here. This little person wants to exercise some integrity. They want to exercise some freedom of choice, and therefore I will give them a choice. Would you like peas or applesauce with that? Would you like to wear your green shirt or your brown pants or both? And then the child gets the chance to experience making choices and making their opinion known and having it honored by the parents, and it's the fulfillment of that desire comes forth without the mom having to deal with the problem of, you know, no, I don't want to wear clothes today, which isn't an option, right? You have to wear your seatbelt. You have to wear your clothes, you know? So do you want to, well, you have to sit in your car seat, but you know what? Would you like to sit on this spot, or we could put it over on this spot over here? So that's not an uncommon experience. It's not an uncommon thing that happens. So what's happening, because we're kind of out of time, is we're just going back into everybody's little child states and conditions. And if not in this lifetime, because I know some of you had amazing parents, we go back into previous incarnations or previous situations and circumstances where you felt that your personal power was relinquished. And in some cases, for some people, that means past lives of abuse, even self-abuse, such as relationships with alcohol in past lives, because that's a self taking away one's own power. So all those situations, what's happening is the celestial level of the self is activating up in its angelic form. So like an angel, you're going back and you're just sitting with yourself back then at that moment, those moments where you felt like you relinquished your personal power and you felt helpless, victimized, worthless, not your ideas and perceptions weren't important. Your right to have the autonomy to decide how your world goes was taken away. Those moments, reacquisition of power, the reestablishment of yourself as a force of nature. Yourself as a force of nature. And remember, in all those situations, that scenario arose because it was helping you grow and get stronger in some other way. So God bless you. God bless us all and all of our ancestors for all the stuff that we've been through over centuries and centuries that was challenging, that has brought us to this unbelievably amazing point in the history of mankind. Absolutely incredible. I love you all so dearly. I am glad that I'm going to get to connect up again with everybody tomorrow to answer some more questions, and I'll do them right at the beginning of tomorrow's session so that if you get the recording, then you get to hear your question first, because people tomorrow will probably also have questions. So thank you very much for being with me. The next set of webinars should be very interesting. We're going to try something new, and that's to do it kind of a little bit more like a classroom setting, because I really feel you guys have been with me for a long time and you're so ready to start to really embody your reality as a force of nature, your reality as divinity incarnate. And I would like to kind of make it even more hands-on for everybody. So I'm going to kind of try to structure it with, exercises and I'm putting together a syllabus. At least my intention is to put together a syllabus and that kind of thing. So it's very orderly and it's all laid out and it makes lots of sense. And you have ways that you can start to, on your own, self-sufficiently move yourself forward without me. I love you. I want you to do this and not to depend on anybody. Okay, thank you. All gratitude to everybody who is participating tonight and to all the finest expressions of your beautiful, exquisite, amazing beings. I had so much fun tonight and I'm looking forward to having more fun tomorrow. See you all soon. Bye. Bye.